Hello and welcome to episode 2 of Home Emmanomics. Today is, I don't know which day of our pandemic it is where we're stuck at home for the COVID pandemic, and I decided that this week I'm going to teach you how to make sourdough at home. We have bread rolls and we're going to be making bread loaves as well today. First things first, I'm going to talk about what I did last night to get to this point. We're going to start with our starter that was given to me a long time ago from a friend in Davis, California, and it is still thriving years later. So this is my sourdough starter. I don't really need to weigh this, but I got 134 grams. It's not really important. What's important is how much you add to it. So I'm actually going to shift it to ounces and pounds just so it's easier for you to understand. I like to do 2.5 ounces of flour, and you'll do the same thing with your water. So if you have 2.5, you're going to add all the way to 5. So you're going to do the same amount of each. There we go. 5 ounces total, 2.5 and 2.5. And then I'm going to make sure that I refill my starter with some food. Same thing. I'm going to add my 2.5. There we go. A little extra. This one is my crock that goes right back in my fridge. When I'm ready to make another batch, I leave it out an entire day or night on my countertop. And it's just perfect like it was over there. And then we're gonna stir this one. It's gonna seem a little thicker once you add the flour to your starter, but don't worry, it's gonna get super bubbly and thinner as it eats the gluten overnight. I don't like using plastic, so I use a plate, although you want it to breathe anyway, so you might as well just put a plate on top. And let that sit overnight. It's time to go to bed. In the morning, we'll deal with the rest of that. It's in the morning, and I have my sourdough starter all bubbly and ready. And I like to use the pan that I'm going to bake it in, just because it's easier. Less dishes to wash. Lord knows we have enough dishes right now to deal with our kids home nonstop. Okay, so I'm gonna actually switch it to grams here. I could be more precise with grams. So I'm going to go ahead and put in 200 grams of starter. And if you have a little more or a little less, it's okay, but this recipe should give you approximately 200. See, I even have more than 200, which is fine. So I've got 206 grams of my starter. You can do 200, 198, somewhere around that is fine. If you're off by a bit, it's okay, your bread's gonna be fine. So now I'm going to put in 700 grams of water. So I said 700, I went 729. That's okay. I want you to know that it's okay not to be precise when you make this. All right, so now I'm gonna go whisk it. I'm gonna sing a song while we whisk. Whisk, whisk, whisk your sourdough. So you, what?
And make some bread at home.
So you can make some bread at home. And now I'm gonna add my white and my wheat flour. I like to use high gluten flour. It makes it stretchier and easier to work with. But you can use any flour you have on hand. So I'm gonna get to 1,000. So I did 800 of the white and I did 200 of the wheat. You can make any adjustment you want to your white and wheat flour. Just know that you need about 1,000 grams total. Now I'm going to use a small spoon because it gets really, really sticky. If you put it on the whisk, it's going to go nuts and it's going to be stuck all over it. So, okay, you can see at this point it's getting rather sticky. So when I think it's about right, I don't want to over stir it. It's fine right there. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and put the lid on it while it's sitting. I'm going to get my salt ready. 20 grams of salt. And then I'm going to add 50 grams of water. And I ended up with 60. I don't really care that much. It'll be fine. So, I'm gonna stir that up and I'm gonna let this sit for 30 minutes before I pour the salt water in and mix it up. Okay, so it's been 30 minutes, so I'm gonna go ahead and take my lid off, stir my salty water, that's pink because I use pink Himalayan salt, and I'm gonna just go ahead and dump that right on top. And now's the point where you wanna take your hand and start kind of stretching it. Okay, you are scraping it from the sides, scraping it from the bottom. You're gonna want it to turn into this nice ball here. Just kind of squish it around with my hands. It's very therapeutic. If you wanna add herbs, or I like to add dried tomatoes, or the kids like cinnamon and raisin, this is the point at which I would add those. We're gonna put the lid on, and for the first hour or two, you're gonna be going every half hour or so and turning it just like I did. After about the first or second hour, depending on your temperature in your house, you're gonna wanna turn it a little more gently. And you want it to rise, and you don't want to kind of make it sink too much. So right now I'm pretty forceful with it. Later on I'm just going to be turning it gently. So first hour to 2 hours, you're just going to be mixing it up with your hand, turning it, flipping it over, and then after that, just every now and then, maybe every hour or so, hour and a half, sometimes I forget about it and it's been 2 hours, that's okay. Turning it gently after that point. All right, so it's been about 8 or 9 hours total. It's been fairly cold in the house today, so you can see it's not risen all the way. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn it out onto the table. So I'm going to scrape this onto the counter. Hold on, there's an ant on the counter. No more sugar ants. Sorry, dude. So I'm going to go ahead and flour this up. And I'm going to separate this one into 2 loaves. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to move this around a little bit. I'm going to start to use my hands and this thing to kind of roll it under. And what it's doing is grabbing that flour on the sides and pushing it in. I can also take my hands and kind of fold it over a little bit. Basically, you want to get that flour rolled on into the inside. I'm going to add a little more flour because my dough is a little extra sticky. You don't want to make it too hard though. I still want it to be super pliable. I don't want to add a whole lot of flour, just enough to be able to work with it. And then I need to let this sit for about 30 minutes because I'm gonna have to fold it again. It's called a bench rest. I'm not gonna bench rest my rolls. That's gonna come later, and I'm not gonna stretch it out again because they're smaller. And it's pretty easy to make them soft and supple this way. So I'm gonna take about the size I would use for a roll. I don't know, about a little bit smaller than my whole hand, maybe like my palm size. And I'm gonna start stretching that. And then you're gonna fold it in as many times as you can. Sometimes I'll add a little more flour to the back side so that it's easier to stretch over, but you want it to stick to itself on the inside. Meanwhile, what you're doing here is folding more flour into it so that that sourdough can eat more flour and rise really nicely. And I'm gonna try and make this pretty tight, because the tighter you get it, the better and fluffier and larger and softer roll you're gonna get. And then when I'm done and I feel like I've done enough folds on that, I'm gonna just put a little flour on the bottom also so it doesn't stick too much. And so I should be able to whack it around in my hands, and not too hard, and then put it on my tray with some parchment paper. And I'm gonna continue doing this. So now I've let the rolls sit for about 30 minutes and just kind of make an X in the middle, because if you don't do this, then it's gonna end up kind of exploding through the side. I did that once, it's not fun. Well, I mean, they still work, but they're just weird shaped rolls. So hot crust buns, right? So now I'm gonna go ahead and put these in the oven. So while those are baking, Alexa, set timer for 20 minutes. I'm gonna go ahead and work with my other roll.
Starting now.
So this will be our loaf. I'm going to use my bigger banneton because I like the bigger one better. But you can use a smaller or a larger one. It just makes it taller or a little bit wider. So what I'm going to do with this one, I already have it sitting here for 30 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and grab one side of it and pull it up and kind of stretch it a little bit. And then fold it over on itself. Same thing with the other side. It might come loose. That's okay. Stretch the other side. So we're going to fold it onto itself in thirds, just like that. Then you're going to take the other sides. Kind of do the same thing. You're going to stretch it out, fold it over the middle. Stretch it out, fold it over the middle. And then what I like to do, just like the rolls, is kind of tuck some sides in a little bit. Right? The point of doing this is you're going to be wanting to get as much flour folded in from the top as you can. Okay, so now I'm going to pick it up. Actually, before I pick it up, I'm going to take some, I use a little white rice flour because it doesn't stick to the banneton so much. And I don't wash this, I just keep it in a good, safe place and just keep reusing it because it makes it more non-stick. So a little white rice flour and a little of your regular high gluten flour. And I'm going to go ahead and just stick it in there. If you don't have white rice flour, it's fine. Just put a good amount of flour in there. So we're going to let that sit for up to 3 hours or so. There's something I forgot to mention. You don't have to do this, but if you want softer rolls, you add a pan of water to the bottom of your oven when you start your rolls, and they will keep the crusts a bit softer. So you should do that at the beginning, but I didn't do that for mine because I like them kind of crunchy. All right, so my timer went off for 20 minutes. It wasn't quite enough, so I added another 10 minutes to it, and they should be ready now. Those look good. So I'm gonna go ahead and take those out. Look at how pretty those are. All right, and if your other bread is ready, I'm gonna go ahead and change my oven to 500, and I'm gonna put my pan in. So 500 degrees, let it sit until your oven reaches 500. And I'm going to take my dough, and it's a little flatter than usual because I'm doing it a little bit faster, but it should be a little bit higher. That's okay, it's still gonna make a good dough, or a good bread. So I'm gonna flip it over onto the parchment paper. Then I'm gonna use my little razor blade to make some, I don't know, fun designs. That looks good. And I'm gonna grab it by the parchment, throw it right in there, and we're gonna put the lid back on, okay, for now. I'm gonna get it baking for 20 minutes with the lid on, then I'm gonna take the lid off, and it's gonna bake for another 25 to 30 minutes. All right, so my bread lid timer just went off. Alexa, stop. My oven is still at 500. Right now I'm going to actually cancel it. I'm gonna choose steam bake. I have a steam bake option, you might not. I'm gonna put it at 450. So we're gonna lower the temperature just a little bit. Oops, I gotta put the bread, hold on. Steam bake, it has a bread option, and then I do 450. If you don't have the steam bake, you could just do 450 regular bake. That just circulates the steam in the oven from the water that I put in. So glass is fogging up because there is water in there. So I'm gonna go ahead and take that lid off now. You can see the bread is rising nicely. It's very pretty, but it's not quite browned yet. So we're gonna put it back in for another 25 to 30 minutes to get that nice and brown. If you like your bread more on the crispy side, then you don't need to add the water and it'll be extra crispy, but my kids complain about it being crispy and hard, so I soften it by using the steam bake option. All right, my timer has gone off. It's been about 25 minutes, and it looks pretty much done. Again, my glasses are fogging up, so I'm gonna take those off. All right, there's my bread, and there is your finished sourdough loaf.